into this like we do always. We have a WhatsApp chat. Please join if you want to get into a whole back and forth on things. Also, if you are struggling with any kind of addiction, any kind of sexual addiction, really, any kind of addiction in general, you need to seek professional help. It's not enough to just learn. You should learn, and you should do that, and it'll help you. But you also need professional help. And if you need help finding that, please reach out, and I can refer you. Okay. Also, this year is, as always, it's Lezech and Ishmas, my father, Yitzchak Kadesh ben Hanan. Olav Shalom, may his Hashem have an aliyah. Okay. I want to talk about, before we jump into this, for a few minutes, just on the Hilul of the Baba Sali. And I know for myself, when I was in Kollel, I was in Kollel I got smicha from Rabbi Yitzchak Berkowitz, and I was in the JK Kollel, the Jerusalem Kollel. And when I was there, I was zeicha to have to make a really good friend who was Sephardi. And the whole world of Yiddishkeit opened up to me. A whole world of Yiddishkeit, because I knew what Sephardim. I had Sephardim living in my community. I grew up in Queens, there's a lot of Sephardim there. But I didn't really interact with them much. But there in Eretz Yisrael, I really got to know a little bit more about the Sephardi world. And it's one of the great, I guess, I don't know how you would say it, the great shames or sadness in our world today, that there still seems, even after all this time, there still seems to just be a divide between the Europeans and the Sephardim. Even though Sephardim technically is Europe, it's from Spain, but there seems to be a divide, and it's getting better. And a lot of people are listening to me talk, and then I'm like, what are you talking about? Everything's fine. I have great Sephardi friends. And that we're in a good place. But it's just, I don't know, it's just interesting that there's a whole world of Torah. I don't know, has anyone ever learned Sephardi Torah before? Unless you're Sephardi. I remember I went, because of this friend of mine, I went through whole Kufa learning. I was learning, do I have it here? Yeah, I'm going to grab it. I picked this up. Is the Ben Ish Chai on, can you see it? Is the Ben Ish Chai on Halacha. And it is absolutely mind-blowing, amazing. I learned it because it's interesting. It was interesting. He doesn't just teach halacha. He has different pieces of Kabbalah before each halacha. Very, very interesting take and approach. And I don't necessarily keep it, but truth be told, there's a lot of overlap. A lot of the stuff we keep, a lot of stuff we don't. You have to have a handle on your own, minig and halacha. But it's just there's such a vibrant, beautiful culture that for some reason it's we don't really many Ashkenazim don't really interact with often enough. It's I feel like the Litvish and the Chassidim are much more kind of interblended than with the Sephardim. And as they say, it's brought down in the Divrei Kabbalah that when Mashiach comes, it'll be in a time when everything, when we're all together, when all the different streams are all kind of blending as one. So I implore you and I encourage you to reach out to your Sephardi friends if you are not Sephardi. And if you are Sephardi, reach out to your Ashkenazi friends. Share the culture, man. And listen, I gotta say, Sephardim have better food. That's it. Except for steak. I don't know if Sephardim do straight I don't know, ribeye steak or a tomahawk steak. I don't know if that's really a Sephardi thing. But aside for straight up steak, Sephardim have way better food. Just saying. Anyway, so the real thing I was thinking about, there's a lot more to talk about, obviously, and I wanted to share that also, just that little piece about Sephardim, unrelated to our regular discussion. But what is related to our discussion is we were talking the other day about the whole concept of Resichas Dam, and that there's this certain, it's interesting, there's this certain way that the Nesivos Shalom is showing us that the things that are already in our toolbox are very powerful tools that we can use in this fight. But I think to take it a step further, it's not only the things that are already in our toolbox, it's the exact same tools that the Yetzer Hara uses and we're familiar with, we can use back on him. and this goes back to something I remember my Rebbe said in like 6th grade. A Chassidish Rebbe, a Satmar Rebbe. When I was in 6th grade in Queens, there was a yeshiva that was like, regular students, but all the Rebbeim were Chassidim from Williamsburg, pretty much. And I remember he's like, the Yetzer Hara, his whole job is to tell you later. You don't have to do mitzvahs now, you could do it later. You don't have to daven now, you can do it later. You don't have to listen to your parents now, you could do it later. Right? Do the fun thing now. And he said, but the key to fight the Yetzer Hara is the same thing. Tell the Yetzer Hara later. Like right now, it's time for me to listen to my parents. I'll do the fun thing later. I'll push that off later. It's a very like insightful thing for a Rebbe to tell 6th graders. Was it 5th grade or 6th graders? I don't remember. I think it was 6th grade. So the key is later. And, right now I'm going to do my mitzvahs. Now I have to daven. Now I have to listen to my parents. And then you tell the Yetzer Hara later. Because when you say later to the Yetzer Hara, you're not saying no. Remember, we talked about fighting the Yetzer Hara head on. It doesn't always work. And it's actually interesting because when we'll see later in the later Torahs that he does talk about that. That is a strategy, fighting the Yetzer Hara head on. It could be a strategy, but again, like there's different strategies, different approaches. My personal experience is fighting Yetzer Hara head on doesn't work. It doesn't work. You have to do like what we talked yesterday about starving out the enemy, those kind of things. Doing the opposite of what the Yetzer Hara wants you to do, which is again like this concept of later. So what does it have to do with the Sephardi program? So yesterday at this program, it's a very beautiful thing they set up in Chicago. There's not a strong Sephardi community here. There is a few Sephardi shuls here, and there are a lot of Sephardim here, but not, like ratio-wise, is much, much smaller than the Ashkenazi Chassidish community here. And many out-of-town cities find a similar situation. And this Rav, who is a Rav here in Skokie, Rabbi Isaacs, he started a program in Chicago called Morasha. And essentially what it does is it goes into all the schools here, because all the frum schools here are not Sephardi schools. So if you're a Sephardi kid and you live locally here, and you go to a Jewish school in Chicago, you're going to go to an Ashkenazi school. And the Ashkenazi Rebbeim, the Ashkenazi teachers, they're not designed to set up to like talk about Sephardi culture, or Sephardi, the minhagim of the Sephardim during the Yom Tovim, different times of the year, things like that. And he started a program where they go into schools in these types of communities, and they teach kids. They teach the whole class about the Sephardi heritage. So it's a boost for the Sephardi kids there because it makes them feel special. And then also it's just education for the Rebbeim and the other kids. It's like, what are Sephardim about? And again, it's like me picking up a Ben Ish Chai and learning the halachas. It's like it's extremely fascinating and interesting, and it's part of our like communalative. I don't know what the right word is, but our like collective heritage. Like Sephardim are part of our collective heritage. Like we may not practice the exact Messiah, but it's still your Torah to enjoy and to be inspired by and to connect to. So that was a very fascinating organization, and I just wanted to give it a shout out. And number two is they had this band that came in, like this Sephardi Chazan. It was name was I think was Rabbi. It was Chazan Yisrael Levi, and it was just only Sephardi music. And I realized something. I was ripping on Jewish music the other day, not ripping like in a bad way. There's nothing wrong with Jewish music. But when we're trying to create a Resichas Dam, we're trying to create a situation where your blood's boiling and your blood's getting fired up to do Aveira, that you need to find tips and tricks while that chain is around your heart pulling you to do something that's wrong. You need to figure out how to boil your blood and redirect. And we talked about, like, for a lot of people, learning Torah is not going to do it, right? Because when you're in the heat of the battle, like going to sit and learn Daf Yomi, maybe you will, right? But for many of you, like sitting down and learning something, you're just not in the right frame of mind. So exercising, and then listening to music could be a very powerful tool. And I said that like your regular Jewish music, my personal feeling is that it's not enough to get your blood boiling. It's very sweet music, it's heartsick music, it's music that's, dveikistic, and even the more punchy stuff that we have today, It's not really my style, or like the techno DJ kind of stuff. Not really my thing. So that's not really going to move me. It's not really getting me like, really fired up and then able to take that boiling blood and redirect. So we talked about like listening to heavy metal music and listening to rap music. Obviously they have to be clean lyrics, because otherwise you're defeating the whole purpose. But and you can find them. You can find this music out there. And again, I'm not necessarily recommending listening to non-Jewish music, but it's better to listen to non-Jewish music and get yourself fired up and then distracted from the compulsion to do something wrong than not, right? But I have to say, the Sephardi music with the tabuka, and then there was, I think, something called a zither. Someone correct me in the chat if let Jake know if I'm right. It was like this like interesting instrument with all these strings. It was a flat thing, kind of sitting flat on a stand with tons of strings, and he had his fingers and he was going like this. I think it's called a zither. I don't know. And just the whole thing, and it was beautiful. And with the tabuka, particularly for me, the bongo thing, that was blood boiling. That was like pumping up in like a very like this like ancient calling back to ancient times. I don't know, something about the bongo that gets you fired up. And I remember in Shalom that they used to have, I think certain nights in the week, don't ever tell my rebbeim that I did this, but you go to town at night and they would have like this like bongo circle. It's very moving, very, very moving, the bongos and the sound of the bongos. I would say more than even like regular drums. Just some, I don't know, like ancient part of me that just like wakes up when I heard about it. So that I wanted to throw out to the Chevra, listening to like that real authentic Sephardi music. Also, I think personally, for me, gets my blood boiling. So I wanted to share that with you and also talk a little bit about this program. But let's dive in. So I'm going to go back a little bit to the paragraph. We're going to go back because we got caught up in the middle, and I want to make sure we're doing this right. Okay, so we ended off saying like different strategies. We got to fight this battle, and we got to come up with strategies. So one strategy is just do the opposite. Whatever the HR tells you to do the opposite. This is good in life. This is also, I didn't talk about this last night, but I want to add one thing. This is good advice whenever the HR says do this, even if he's telling you to do a mitzvah. When you get in touch with your feelings and you have self-awareness, which is very key. We didn't talk about that yet here. But self-awareness is the most important skill that you need to learn right now. Right now, you have to start doing this. We talked about like maybe journaling can help you figure that out. Writing a little bit in the morning for 5 minutes, just journaling about your thought, whatever's coming up. You get to start to see patterns of how you think on like kind of come to life when you write. And it's a very, very important to have self-awareness, which means just like you are aware of like what triggers you, how you think about things. You're not just move, go to the next thing. And in general in life, so the Yitzhar is going to tell you to do a mitzvah, don't do it. And generally, like when people around you, even holy people, special people, if you don't have really relationship with them, they're just giving like marching orders to the community. They say everyone's got to be like this, or like there's unwritten rules in the firm community. Everyone's got to be like this. Generally speaking, if you don't follow that advice and instead you go search up by yourself or with a rebbe that you designated, right? Asay l'charav. That's why it doesn't say go to the Mishnah Novus doesn't say show up at a shul and just like daven in a place and then call the rabbi who runs the place your rabbi. No, it says asay l'charav. Make for yourself a rav, meaning you build a relationship there. Kanei l'chachaber. Build yourself a friend who has the guts to tell you off when you're doing something wrong. Aside from that, if you're just going with the flow, maybe that's just the Yetzer Hara. And do the opposite of that. And when I mean do the opposite, like obviously don't break Torah or break halach or anything like that. But meaning go learn up the sugya. So they say that you have to wear a hat and jacket during davening. Why? Have you ever stopped to think why? Obviously, we know basically, you need to dress like a king when you come stand for Hashem. You have to dress professionally. You got to dress nicely. But why are we wearing this black fedora and a blazer, a sport jacket, or a suit? Why is that the thing? I don't know. Sephardim wore these like long tunics. right? Back in the day, we all wore long tunics back in the day when we lived in Yerushalayim. They're in the Beis Mikdash. Like what? There's actually like a little chevra I met once in Yerushalayim that they said that you can't be a good Jew unless you wear the clothing that was worn back in the temple times. They're a little bit, they're a little bit off the reservation a little bit. But why? Like why do we wear the hat and jacket? Like what's the point? And I'm not knocking the hat and jacket, but don't just wear the hat and jacket because everyone wears the hat and jacket and you're going to look weird. Wear the hat and jacket because like you learned up the sugya. You learned up the sugya of hikayin. You learned the sugya of standing before Hashem and davening and dressed properly. And then you got to look at the history. Like where did the hat come from? Where's the fedora come from? Right? From mafia bosses to presidential candidates to like these were all the kind of styles that we're wearing. So like how did it get schlepped into the frum community? So important questions to ask, and I don't know how many people are out there that are willing to give you a straight answer, but figure it out for yourself and make a conscious decision. It's like I'm wearing a hat and jacket because of this and this and this reason, not because everyone just does it. It's very, very important in life, lesson in life. And the Menachem Mendel B'Tepik says if you do this for consistently for a certain amount of time, like over time, you'll start getting to the habit and flow of like really being in the state of like Aranov, where it says he lift up his feet, like we talked about. He lift up his feet. The wise apostles specify they lifted up his feet to go to Elon Mamre. Like we don't need to know the details of how he walked. So obviously the answer is that he was completely in control of his entire life. Every decision, every part of his body, every muscle he moved was under his control. So we should practice that. Obviously don't go crazy, but little things here and there, the questions. I would start with the questions. There's a lot of things in life that we have like run on automatic. We just have like the program running. There's like the program running in the background. But I'm sure some of you have thought about the hat and jacket before. Some of you have other questions, like just simple, like halachic shilas that are related to daily practice. Figure it out. When you do your journaling in the morning, you just write literally 5 sentences, and one of them could be like, I don't know, like why do we? This is some silly, and there's very easy answers to this, but why do you wear tzitzis? Like the mitzvah in the Torah only says that you got to wear tzitzis if you happen to be wearing a 4-cornered garment. So why do you wear tzitzis? Why was Klal Yisrael makabeling themselves to wear tzitzis every day? Especially nowadays when our clothing, the general clothing that we wear, it doesn't have 4-cornered garments. So you have to like go out of your way and get yourself a 4-cornered garment called tzitzis to wear. I don't know. Why do we do that? There's easy answer to that. I'm not going to go into it now. But the point is that like if that's something that was on your head, then find out for yourself. Don't just like whatever. That's what we do. Because Hashem said to do it. It's like, why? You're going to live life like that? The Yetzer Hara is going to catch you in the act every single time. If you live life rightly, but just, like a sheep, listening to whatever everybody else tells you to do, just because, it's a life of meaninglessness. It's like, why are you here? Why do you exist? Are you really making a difference in the world? Because you're not living for yourself, you're living for somebody else. Right? The famous Kutzker line, if I am I because you are you, and you are you because I am I, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I because I am I, and you are you because you are you, then I am I, and you are you. I'm very proud. I got that smooth. I always messed it up whenever I said this over. I got that smooth. So, shkoich, I appreciate the opportunity to get that smooth for you guys. It's recorded. You heard it here. Adam Aranov got that Kutzker line all the way to the end without messing up the line. Anyway, so very important, and that's why it's very important that we revisit that. Okay, now let's jump to the next thing over here is Oid Yesh Eitzah Nimratza. There's another very powerful Eitzah to use as part of your tool belt in order to fight back. Okay. And it goes like this. That whenever you're in war, there's fortresses or fortifications that are chitzayni, like the outer walls of a gate, and then there's also the traps that we have on the inside. I'm going to move through this a little quickly because we did some of this yesterday. And if the enemy breaks through the fortifications, the outer ones like the walls, Hasakana gadol mi'od. That sakana is really, really big, because now you have to rely on the stuff that are inside. But the stuff that are inside, they can be deadly and they can be effective. We talked about, like, they used to have in the castles, like along secret, like, holes along within walls of, like, they're called murder holes, where they could, like, put their bow and arrow or stick their spears through it or whatever. But it's not as effective as, like, making sure the wall isn't breached. Right, so therefore, like, the biggest effort you have to put in when you're protecting your castle is to make sure the walls are not breached. So too is by the person with his eyes, regarding his eyes. The eye can see very, very far, with far distances. And obviously your eyes can get affected. Your eyes can get very affected by, even from like a far off distance, right? Because it's like, as you're connecting to this davar asa that you're looking at, all of a sudden it's inside. And then all of a sudden, the enemy is the second you look at it. That's why they, like, even looking at it, they're considering, like, as if it's the Isser itself, because in a lot of ways it is, because you now brought the enemy inside your heart, and once the enemy is broken through the outer fortifications, it's very difficult to get it out of your heart, as we talked about. So, Chazal said, "Al pasuk toiv mare inayim mahalch nefesh." Right, so it's a Chazal in Yuma Ayin Dalid. Chazal in Yuma Ayin Dalid. I'm just looking at the details. Hold on one second. All right. Right? Better the eye see than a wandering soul. Better what the eye sees than a wandering soul. That's what the pasuk is. So what does that mean? Shekasha estakel sasura megufa shel avera. The way he's learning up the pasuk over here is that looking at something aser is almost like worse than the actual avera itself. And it's the true thing about the eyes, is that you literally can be a million miles away looking at something on a screen, and it's like you're connected to that isser that's happening right then. Or you're standing, on one side of the street, and you can look all the way across the other side of the street, and the other person that you're looking at may not even realize that you're involved in essentially doing things against their will, and you could still fall into sin. So you could do this from far away, and in any moment you can do it. Like an arrow that attacks. I think that's what it meant. An arrow that attacks, like an arrow that flies. Sorry, an arrow that flies during the day. And the plague that stalks in the night, or walks in the night. So what does that mean? That, like, in the daytime when you can see, right? Not in the night. In the daytime you can see, you can actually do a lot more damage, because the arrow can do damage from a greater distance, right? At night, I said yesterday a little different shot, but it was wrong. At night you can't see, so when you're not using your eyes, you have to be up close and personal to the Avera in order to be affected by it, because you can't see it, so it has to be up close and personal. I said a different shot where I said, like, once you see it and you're during the daytime, and then you allow yourself to get hit by the arrow, so now it's inside you, and that becomes like a plague, where you're now blinded and it's now darkness for you. But it's like the plague where you have to fight it. It's now inside you, and it's like up close and personal inside you. So that was my own shot, but I don't think that's what he means here. So he's just focusing on the fact that during the day when you can see, that's like the arrow attacking you from a far distance. So yesh istakos asuris. There are types of istakos asuris or shaychus biyoim, v'yesh hashaychus ba'oifel. And there's also ways to connect to this at night in the dark, right? But he's actually saying a different thing. He's saying, like, in whatever capacity, there's ways to get affected by looking at something. So and in any regard, you can get pulled into it, into a situation where you don't even feel that it's such a big deal. It's like I was walking down the street and I saw something that wasn't appropriate, and it affected me, but it's not, whatever. I just saw it. It's not a big deal. Like, I didn't do anything. I didn't follow along with it. Well, the Maisa, and you might not think it's a big deal. Again, this is where self-awareness comes in, because you could lie. We are the worst liars. That's not the right way to say it. the person we lie to the most is ourselves. The person we lie to the most is ourselves. And not only that, we so desperately want to believe the lies that we tell ourselves that we actually can get ourselves to believe it. So when we're doing something wrong, we can ignore that little voice inside of us that says, hey, this is wrong, this is not appropriate. You can do that. And you won't realize that looking at this thing is inappropriate, and you'll actually believe that it's not a big deal. I just was looking, I didn't do anything wrong. But that's why you have to get in touch using journaling or other techniques of hisbodedus and meditation, and just like analyzing the type of thoughts that you have in your brain, to get used to no, I see where I'm going wrong. I see where I'm covering it up and I'm lying to myself, and I see that it's a lie, and that the real truth is that I did look on purpose to get pleasure from looking at something I shouldn't have. And so it takes a very high level of maturity to be able to do that. But it's an essential skill for being a yid, for being an adult human in the world, is to have this self-awareness. Ulamaisa, of our Isser Gomrim in the Torah, and Lamaisa, you're over an Isser in the Torah, because the pasuk says, right, you shouldn't stray after your heart and after your eyes. So even if you strayed after your eyes, it's included in the Isser. You can be a gadol in Torah. You can be complete apostate. I don't know what that word means. It means someone who's completely rejected Torah. I don't know what the actual word apostate means, but someone who's rejected Torah, rebelled against Torah. So, ein lach isser Torah kazeh. There isn't really another isser that we have. Shegedolim v'toivim, that the great ones and the good ones, mizalzalim by tchilasai, but like that they can be mizalzal on it, and in the beginning it could be an accident, and it ends up being willing. Because over time, again, like we were so good at lying to ourselves, we keep telling ourselves nothing bad happened, everything's fine, I'm fine, everything is fine. But you're never really focusing on yourself to get that self-awareness of like where you're really holding, and you can end up getting into really surim. And the reason for this is shu inyan shel hergel ke'ayin teva. I think this is where we got cut off yesterday. The reason why we can, even good people can get so caught up in this, is because we're just so used to our eyes just looking wherever we want to look. Shadam writes a habit that a person wants to see with his full capacity to see, with his full vision. He doesn't want it to restrict his seeing. You want to walk down the street and just take in the world, right? You just want to take it in. That's a natural inclination for any human. So either this is the Magri Mezrich or Menachem Mendel Vitebsk. Maybe it's because Menachem Mendel Vitebsk was talking about something else before. So maybe this is Rabbeinu Magri Mezrich. Possible. I don't know. Hine im Yotzim Mitzrayim. Right, we said this. This is Magri Mezrich. We said this all the way before in the previous essay. Right, Hine Am Yotzim Mitzrayim. Here is the nation that left Mitzrayim, and Hine Kiseis Ein Aretz, and they are covering the eye of the land. So like you can look at this and like think this means it's just like a nice way of saying that the Yidden were freed, and then now they're multiplying and covering wherever you can see over the land. But no, he said it's not like this. That shikisi is ayin. How wonderful is it that Klal Yisrael, even though they're out and they're free and they're living life, that shikisi is ayin, that they're covering their actual eyes. That they're not lifting themselves up. They're preventing themselves from lifting themselves up and just looking wherever they want. This is a very intense eitzah, and it's not going to work for everybody. I'm going to be honest. But it's important to know that it's out there, and I actually have a little vart, and it's important to try to work on it in the ways that we can, and I'll talk about it in a little more detail. But here's the eitzah. The eitzah is ragel mimei yaldus. The eitzah is that you should get used to as when you're young. Lo lahar misenav. Don't lift your eyes when you're walking in the street. Not when you're walking the street. Don't lift your eyes without having thought about it. You got to train yourself, and it's easier if you do this when you're young. But it should be your eyes shouldn't be just looking anytime something happens. And I actually had a Rebbe in 10th grade. I learned in Yeshiva for My Rebbe in 10th grade was Rabbi Neckeritz. Maybe some of you know him or knew him. And right, so maybe some of you knew him, but I apologize. I got a little distracted. Someone was trying to communicate with me, but we're back. He was a real Talmud of Navardic. Navardic were like masters at this. Navardics, like, they had a huge focus. If you ever learn Madregas Adam, so in the beginning of that sefer, like before the actual sefer starts, is like a little bit of like an introduction. Before that, it describes like the whole Seder Yeshiva and like what they would learn in Yeshiva. It's very fascinating stuff. And the idea over there was that you really learned to discipline. You really learn discipline and control over your entire being as best as you can, like really high level things. Obviously, there's the famous stories of Navardic where, they went into a bakery and they asked for a bag of nails, right? They would do these like slightly embarrassing things just to get used to the feeling of embarrassment, so that they were okay when they had to stand up for what was right. They had the reps. Again, guys, we're talking about it's reps in the gym. It's not about conquering the whole thing in one shot, listening to the sefer and now like, oh, I could take care of the HR. It's like, no, you got to find little things that you can do. Push up, start with 1 push-up, and then you go to 10 push-ups, then you go to 20 push-ups over time. So they were practicing that. They went into a store and they would practice. They would say these little embarrassing things, not enough to get them sent to like the mental home, right, to the insane asylum, but it was enough for them to start working out that muscle of shame. It's like, why are we so terrified? You know what I mean? Like, how many, you all know the story. Like, you've probably seen this. Maybe you've done it. You're standing with your wife at the checkout at the supermarket, and I'm trying to see who should I blame in this story. I'm going to blame the guy. The guy can handle it, right? The guy can handle it, right? So the wife is taking time to, like, maybe she misplaced the cash, and she's looking for the cash, and people are waiting online, and you're getting yourself all stressed up because you're getting embarrassed that you're holding up the line. It's like, why? Like, this is your wife and everybody else in the line. You're like apologize. So, maybe in your mind you're apologizing, depending on how long she's delaying. Maybe you're apologizing out loud to people. Look, I'm sorry it's taking us so long. It's like, why are you embarrassed? Your wife is allowed to like misplace her wallet in her purse and is digging around and looking for it. And how many guys are like, oh, honey, I can't believe that you have so much garbage in your purse. Women's purses are so full of stuff. They're constantly carrying stuff, and they can't just find simple things. The guys are very easy. We just got a wallet, and there's a few credit cards, and cash or no cash, and that's it. There's nothing else in the wallet. Hopefully, I don't know. Some of you guys have like crazy wallets, but most of you guys, like, that's what's in a guy's wallet. It's just your credit cards, cash, ID, maybe your gun license, right? That's about it. But for women, they literally got the whole house is in that purse. And you're sitting there apologizing to people behind you, to the cashier, and it's like, who cares about anyone? The most important person in that entire store at that moment is your wife. So it takes an extra few minutes. Like, why are you getting embarrassed? About what? Like, you stand there for half an hour. You owe more to your wife and what she's done for you and the family than anyone in that store will ever do for you. But because we're used to being with our wife, we're used to spending time, like, we're used to, not being our best selves. You know her, she knows you, but you're not used to having that around other people. And Navardic really tried to burn that out of you. And you need to burn that out of you if you're going to be winning against the Yetzer Hara. If you're going to have really any success in the world, you have to, like, the real successful people are the ones that, people laugh and like, oh, that guy has no busha. It's not that he has no busha. It's just that he did a cost-benefit analysis on the busha that he's feeling. And he's saying, right now, right, it's going to cost me more to embarrass my wife by saying sorry to everybody. It's just going to cost me more. Like, I'm going to ruin my relationship with someone I really care about. So all the people waiting online can literally go jump in a lake, and I'm going to wait patiently while my wife gets herself together. And if the cashier is looking bored and getting upset, there's a reason why that person's a cashier. They either haven't made it in life, or they're dealing with some other issue, or they're bored, or it's a part-time job, or whatever reason is. They could have 1,000 reasons why they're getting upset at you. right? Or they're getting stressed out when you're taking time at the. I'm not making fun of all cashiers. I'm talking about the one that's getting upset at you because your wife's taking a long time. There's many reasons why they're getting upset, and it has nothing to do with actually her. Maybe there's something else going on in their life that they're have anxiety about. So who cares what other people are doing? Like, you have responsibility to take care of your wife. That's it. That's it. And to make sure she feels secure and safe and cared for and loved, and embarrassing her like that for no reason in front of people that you don't know and don't care about is crazy. Is quite frankly crazy. I feel like that has to be said. But that the Varik was training you how to do this, and you have to get used to it. So back to my Rabbi Nekeritz used to say, he's like, when you're sitting in Beis Medrash and it's the middle of davening, and the doors, we were in the new building, like in the new building in Shifrakwe. When the doors would close, you would hear it. It wouldn't be like a bang, but you would hear the door like, kind of thud shut. He's like, so when you hear that happening, it's like, you don't need to turn around and see who walked in late. Why do you need to turn around and see who walked in late? But we all, like, middle of davening, I guess we're so bored with the davening. Our eyes are always looking around. What's the Edom doing? What's that guy doing? Who walking in? You hear the door slam, and it's like, ooh, gotta check it out. And he would always say, it's like, why? There's no reason for it. And you should train. He told all of us, 10th graders, you should train yourself to not feel compelled to turn around. And it's going to be hard, and it's okay. It's not like, if you mess up a few times, it's fine. Like, don't be too hard on yourself. It's a simple little technique you can use. And I've done this to some success. I would say, like, I can tell when I'm not my best. When I'm not my best is when I'm like overly distracted by those kind of things, and I'm like looking around, and I'm like, oh, Adam, what's going on inside you that like you're getting overly distracted? And like when I'm super locked in to davening, or if I'm in a giving shir, or something else is happening, or at home and focusing with the wife and the kids, and something happens that's not related, like if I'm zoned in and I'm doing the right thing, like I'm not gonna. I feel like I have trained myself in a way that I'm able to not look up. But again, like a lot of it is to do, like, I don't do it as often, and we live in a crazy world, and we got phones, and like, we're doing Zoom on a computer, and someone texts me while I'm doing the shir, and I get all flushed and distracted because, I'm not a perfect person, and there's something I need to work on. But this technique of controlling where you look, is extremely important to work on. And it's not hard to start working on it. Like, again, not to be perfect at it, but you can slowly train yourself. Like, you start off by like just noticing when you do it, and then ask the question, like, why? And then over time, it's just like your mind will be like, you're right, why? I'm not even gonna. And over time, you're gonna be able to control yourself. There's a long arichas I have about like dealing with, maybe we'll talk to you guys about it, dealing with stimuli in the world. I'm not going to go into it right now. But, very, very simply, we think that, like, when something happens, then we have a reaction. That there's only two steps in that process. Something happens, and then we react or we don't react. But there's actually another step in there, and there's a few steps, and it's actually backed by science as well, and how the brain works and how response times happen. And it's important to, like, know that you have it in your hands to really control yourself. Like, you can get to a point. It's possible to get to a point where, like, a nuclear bomb can go off and you won't flinch. It's possible. I mean, obviously, maybe that's a little over exaggeration, maybe, but it's possible. You can hear loud noises or major distractions, or like real life crises are happening, but you're so rock steady that you don't have to. That you're not getting like moved one way or the other. All right, the Rebbe Rayatz was like that. The sixth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the one right before this, the one who passed away. When he came over from Europe, he was running away from the KGB, and they were like got onto a train. He was with a bunch of Chassidim, and he was reading through letters. He was sitting on the train, and he was like reading through letters of different Chassidim from around the world. And one of the Chassidim that were with him were like, "How can you sit and read letters?" And he was responding also. He was reading the letters and responding, writing his own letters in response, and getting ready. The next time they hit a mailbox, he'd be able to mail it out, or get the message sent, or whatever it is. And one of the Chassidim were like, "How are you sitting and reading letters? Like we're running from the KGB right now." And he said, "No, right now we're sitting on a train. Like we got into the train, we left. Yeah, the KGB were after us, but in this moment, I could focus on like communicating with the Chassidim." And that was just like such a powerful example of someone who's trained himself to like be so in control of every single moment of his life that he's not moved. It's like people who are being chased by the KGB, right? You'd be shaking in your boots, and even if you got on the train, you'd be sitting in a ball trying to hide in the corner. And he's like, no, like I did my thing, I did my shtalis. We got away from the KGB. We got on the train. We're now traveling. I have letters that I have to write. Being control, you can do that. This is not. I would say. I mean, it's he was a tzaddik and he was able to do that. But these are techniques that you can train yourself to do. You don't have to be a huge tzaddik to do it. They are within your grasp. You just have to put in reps in the gym. Start by little things and grow it. Okay. Uve medrash b'yalkut in the medrash in the Yalkut vayichi Isa Rabbi Masya ben Cherish Shemiyamav loy nasa einav liisha. The famous story of Rabbi Masya ben Cherish that he never ever looked at a woman. Never ever happened. V'haya ziv kleistar panav dam malach hasharis, and there was like a shining on his face that was comparable to the malachi hasharis. V'niso isay min hashamayim b'nisayin shel istaklus, and then there was he came into a situation where there was an assign that he was going to be forced to look. Obviously, not the kind of assign that he was being like compelled by lust or anything, but it sounds like there was a situation where he would be forced to raise his head and he would have to see a woman. So ma'asa oisei tzaddik. So what did this tzaddik do? Carlo Talmud, he called over one of his students, Shayim Mishtaris Lefanim, who was like helping him, taking care of him. Lech havili eish umasmarim. Go quickly, bring fire and like medicine, or like I think bandages. And he like bring it to me. And but not he brought it to him, and nastam be'enav, and he went to go put it in his eyes. He did. He blinded himself with the fire. It was like a burning coal or a burning stick or something. Kivin shara hasatan kach nizazev anafal lachrab. Since when he what was this again? Kevon. Apologize. 1 second. Let me look at this. Let's just quote in the Gemara. Right. So, Kivan, sorry. Shura Satan Kach, there's the Zer V'nafal Acharav. And when the Satan saw this, he was shaking and he fell down in front of him. V'kar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Lamalach, Raphael, and Kadosh Baruch Hu then called to Malach Raphael, L'Refuasa, to heal his eyes, because he was willing to blind himself. V'loi Ratzil his rabbis. But Ramasi didn't want his eyes to be healed. Ad sha'ar v'Kadosh Baruch Hu lied that until HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him shaloi kashal oidpam that he would not put him in another situation. Harisha masar le rakis nafshay elagamas nishmasay. Right? He wasn't just being meiser's nefesh elagamas nishmasay, meaning like meiser nefesh, like really putting physical damage on him, but even like his whole entire life. Why? Because shesuma chashav kames. Suma is chashav kames, pater mikol mitzvahs, and his pater from mitzvahs. So he was willing to risk all of that. But and he wouldn't be able to learn anymore because he couldn't see. And it was all worth it for him. Also that he wouldn't be nichshol in this isser. And it's important for us to, it's important for us to learn from this story. How far we have to take this. This is a very, very high level. It's a very, very intense level. And we can get there. But I want you to remember, like, the Nesivos Shalom is never going to lie to you. He's never going to say that the standard, we said this all the way in the beginning, that the standard, is not where it is. The standard is really high. Your histakel, you look at something that you shouldn't, even for a second, you're gonna be thrown into the status of being a Russia, potentially. We're not gonna lower that bar just because it's hard for us in our modern generation with all the distractions. But we also remember, like, yes, while we're bruised and bloodied, we gotta remember we're like the soldier, and we gotta stay in the fight. And Hashem loves us even though we fall. We have to hold those two in the same thought at the same time. We can never ever come and say, and the Nesivos Shalom will never do this, will say, it's okay. We're living in 2026, and it's just hard. It's a modern world, and there's so much distractions. He's never gonna say like it's okay. What he's gonna say is, you can do it. It's gonna be hard. You're gonna fall. Hashem is with you. You can still do it. Here are tips. Here are tricks. Here's really intense ones about controlling the way you see. But you can do it. It's in your hands to do it. And the goal is maybe not even to win, but it's to stay in the fight. So I would say to you guys, this is a very intense, like not to look anywhere. And like, you see like there's certain chassidim that do this. Like, they don't look at a woman ever, and they don't look up. I've heard people make fun of that. I don't think it's something to be made fun of. Again, if that particular chassid, in his own heart of hearts, is only doing it so he can fit into the tribe, so then yes, that's a problem. The problem is not in actually doing that. The problem is like if you're just doing it because it makes you fit in, or you're doing it because you actually are using that as a way to get closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And that's the key. I know we're at 9:30, but I want to leave you with one thing that's not necessarily related to this one thing we just talked about. It's actually related back to when the Yetzer Hara, the first thing that we learned, that the Yetzer Hara tries to convince you even to do mitzvahs, and that you should do the opposite, because it's all Yetzer Hara. Because if he's convincing you to do it, there's a lot of ego inside, and it's making you feel like, oh, I'm doing such a great job, and you're really just doing the mitzvah for ego. And when you do that, you obviously can get into his trap, that even turning away from mitzvahs. And someone showed me something from the Magmi Mezrich, something that was very shocking, extremely shocking. I'm not going to quote it full because I don't remember it. I don't have it in front of me. But Magmi Mezrich says that when the Yetzer Hara tries to get a frum guy, a ben Torah, someone who's learning, someone who knows Torah mitzvahs, even if he's working, he's working a job, he's in business, but he's learning as much as he can in his spare time. So Yetzer Hara is not going to be so how does Yetzer Hara get that guy? How does he catch him? How does he ensnare him? So Yetzer Hara can't just go to him and say, eat treif. It's not going to work, right? When we walk by, and if you grow up from and you've never eaten McDonald's, and you would never have a Havamina, and you're not interested in leaving the faith, and you care about Torah mitzvahs and care about your relationship with Hashem, you're not really going to get pulled in. Even if you can smell the delicious smell of the hamburgers, it's not really enticing. It's almost like a vomit inducing, right? No one's interested when you walk by Red Lobster. It's funny. I was an administrator in a nursing home, and I got a treat for some of the nurses who completed like certain tasks, and we got like their units squared away. So got them Red Lobster. They wanted it. They wanted to order food, and they chose whatever it was, and I just paid for it on the facility card. So they ordered Red Lobster, and we could talk about whether you're allowed to buy non-kosher food for them. It's a different conversation for a different time. But they got Red Lobster. I never before in real life saw people eating lobster. I saw people maybe on a TV show, but like never really like watching the whole process of someone eating crab. They got a crab. They didn't get lobster. They're eating crab. I kid you not, is the most disgusting thing I have ever seen when it comes to food ever. Just these creatures. It's literally bugs that happen to live in the ocean, but they're bugs, but they're big, and they're like cracking and snapping, and it came with bibs, and they had to wear these bibs, and this was all like delivery to the facility. Then they had like set up in their staff break room, and they have like these bibs they had to wear, and they had like cracking. Their hands were messy, and then I'm like sitting there. I was like, this is the most wild. I sat all the way to the other side of the table. There was a big conference table. They were on one side. It was like a bunch of them on one side, and then I was all the way on the other side of the table, just like I think I had like a cup of coffee with me or something, and that was it. And I'm just like watching in wide-eyed horror. So the Yetzer Hara is not gonna. That was a random story, but I appreciate you guys listening. The Yetzer Hara is not going to get me to be excited or enticed by crab or lobster. It's just not going to work. And I'm confident saying that. The Yetzer Hara knows how to get me in other places, but the Yetzer Hara is not going to get me there. So what's the Yetzer Hara do? This is all from the Magna Mezrich brings this. So the Yetzer Hara is going to say, you know what? I'm going to get this guy, this learned guy, to think to himself that in order for him to be considered a chashuv guy, that in order for him to feel good about himself, I'm going to get him to just learn Gemara Be'in. And really, you need to learn halacha, and you need to learn bitachon, and build your emunah. Like Nesivos Shalom said, that the whole point of the yeshiva is to build a space, an environment to strengthen emunah and shmiras habris. And therefore, when you do other things like learning Torah, it's done in this environment. But it's almost like the goal is not Torah. Obviously, the goal is Torah. Torah is the foundation of our life. But the place of yeshiva has to be done with emunah and with shmiras habris, so that the mitzvahs and the Torah that you learn are meaningful. And the Yetzer Hara flips that. And it's like, just focus on Gemara, because then when when you're in front of friends, you can quote sugyas and you can sound cool. He didn't say the word cool, but you're going to feel chashuv. When really you need to learn halacha, because you need to know what to do. And when you practice halacha properly and you really understand, even on a simple level, even if you didn't go through all the sugyas halacha l'maisa, but you know the practical steps of how to perform halacha. Like I know it's cliche, I know, but how many people really know hilchas brachas? I'm really holding what bracha do I say when, and how much time passed before I can't say brachas hamazon anymore, all that kind of stuff. If I say bracha in one room, can I eat in the next room, or do I have to say sefer bracha? All this kind of, how many of us know this stuff? I'm sure all of you are holding, and you'll know it perfectly, and I'm very proud of you. But in general, how many people know that? Or Hilchas Shabbos, we know the basics, and maybe we did a deep dive in Hilchas Shabbos back 30 years ago when I was back in yeshiva. I did a deep dive in Hilchas Shabbos, but it's been 30 years, and maybe I haven't cracked. Baruch Hashem, I have, but I wouldn't say I know Hilchas Shabbos as good as I should know it. But how many of us cracked open the Sefer Hilchas Shabbos, or anything, the basic day-to-day stuff? I'm not talking about interesting halacha or things that come up once in a blue moon. Just basic halachas. Some of you who are married, now is the time to go through Taras Mishpacha and Hilchas Nida. When was the last time you guys brushed up on it? My Rav, he set up a shir in shul to go over with married men, Hilchas Nida. These are halachas that you need to do in order to live a life of Yireh Shamayim. So the Yetzer Hara confuses us and says, no, we're just going to focus on Gemara, which is so horrifying to say, because we know that's such a huge focus, and everyone's harping on Gemara, Rishonim, Achrayim, going the pilpul, the sugyas, the back and forth. And again, it's what I said before with Daf Yomi. It's if Daf Yomi is something that lights you on fire and you're really doing it because it's honestly what's connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then do it. But if you're just doing it because you want to feel geschmack with yourself, or you think it's going to check off some box, right, but you don't really want to do it, it's not doing anything for you. I'm really sorry to say. And the Yetzer Hara knows that he can catch a frum guy in that, where he's going to make you focus on this, so you never really build your bitachon. We talked about this. It's such a problem in Klal Yisrael that there's we're not learning bitachon in yeshivas and shuls. And again, it's changing now, and we're turning this boat around. And hopefully the Titanic doesn't hit the iceberg that I think we're heading towards. But these are foundations. Your Gemara has no foundation, has no leg to stand on if you're not working on your bitachon. I would go so far as to say that if you do not have a strong understanding of bitachon, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's not hard to learn. It's just daily, reminding yourself of work. There's so many things out there. You can get on WhatsApp chats. Michael Safdie, I very highly recommend. Michael Safdie does a daily bitachon 10-minute shmooze. You could put it on 2x speed and you can hear it in 5 minutes. But he's he just slams it into you over and over again. It's bitachon. Bitachon is not difficult, but it's hard. Meaning it's not difficult to understand, but it's hard to execute. It's hard to actually apply to your daily life. But it's essential. It's essential. If you don't know who you're trusting in, then what are we doing? Literally, why are you learning? Why are you Shomer Torah mitzvahs? So you just do it. So you don't learn bitachon. So you don't know why. You don't trust in Hashem. You don't trust that Hashem is going to take care of you and that there's a whole place for you to be. You think you're not going to look at something inappropriate? If you don't believe that there's a higher mission, and again, maybe you believed it yesterday, but every day is a new journey, right? So yesterday you might have believed that you have a higher mission, that you're fighting for the greater good. And then today you got a stressful day and, rent came and you didn't have the money to pay it. Now you got to wait a few days and now there's a late fee. And then, and then it's wait a minute, Hashem's taking care of you. And we forget that. When we forget that, so we start getting ourselves a lot of anxiety, that's when the Yetzer Hara is waiting and he's crouching in the doors, like we said. Yetzer Hara is waiting. He's waiting for the Talmud Chacham who's not working on his bitachon because he's convinced him that he's got to learn all the Gemaras. He's waiting for that person to just go a few days, a few months, a few years, not really focusing on his bitachon, not really focusing on his day-to-day lemaisa, interacting with Yiddishkeit and connecting to Hashem like through halacha. And then in that matzav, it's very easy to distract. It's very easy to ensnare that guy. It doesn't matter how long his beard is. It doesn't matter how much Torah he knows in his head. Very easy. And Magen Medrash said this. He said it's very scary. It's like the Yetzer Hara. That's his trap. And if you look around us, unfortunately, I don't like to say things like castigating Klal Yisrael. We need to be a Melitz Yosher for Klal Yisrael as much as we can. But like I feel it's important to at least diagnose the problem so that we can come to a solution. We are all very distracted in this generation, and it's just easier. There's more of a return when you learn Gemara because it makes you look cooler. And obviously there's all the fallout because not everyone's like super tuned into Gemara. So like if you're a kid in yeshiva and you're not super tuned into Gemara, but everyone's focusing on Gemara, it could really cause a lot of stress in your life. But if you were teaching bitachon, it's so funny. If you're teaching bitachon in schools, like you're supposed to be teaching bitachon in schools, so the kids who are learning Gemara are going to do it legit, and it's going to be amazing, and they're going to become bikim and iluyim in their Gemara learning because they have a foundation of bitachon. Then also the kids who are not doing so well with Gemara, but they're learning bitachon, which is easy to learn. It's hard to execute, but it's easy to learn. It's not super complex. So anyone can learn bitachon. Anyone can hear shmuz and bitachon. So if those kids are working on it, they're not going to feel as bad because they're going to learn that they're going to practice trusting Hashem. That even though I'm not great at Gemara, it'll be okay. And not only that, that's where I was laughing at. Not only that, not at the kid. I'm not laughing at. I'm laughing at the Rebbe, because when the Rebbe learns bitachon, and he has a student that's not doing as well as he wants, the Rebbe's not going to stress out either. The Rebbe's going to find another way to get his student excited. That's just what's going to happen. Bitachon, literally, it's going to be like the Bareach HaTichon that's going to flow through all of Yiddish life with all Yidden, that any Yid, wherever they find themselves, when they're learning bitachon, they have something to rely on, that everything's going to be okay. I don't have to stress out. So the Rebbe's not going to stress out. And then the Rebbe's not going to call the parents saying, I can't believe your son's not paying attention in class. He's got the ADHD and we got to pour medicine down his throat. Again, if a kid needs medicine, there are kids that need medicine. You speak to a doctor, and if it's appropriate, it's appropriate. Do your own research. I'm not saying all medicine is bad. I'm going to be very honest about that. But there is a level where medicine can become bad, and you have to really know what you're doing. You got to talk to the right people. But how many times the Rebbe is just like, I can't deal with your kid. It's too stressed out. It's like, well, maybe if the Rebbe was learning bitachon, he wouldn't be as stressed out. Maybe. I don't know. Just a thought. So that's what I'm going to end it with. These are strategies. Learn to control yourselves, but don't feel bad that you can't be perfect right away. Put in the reps. And I would recommend every one of you sign up to Michael Safdie's chat. Learn bitachon. When you learn bitachon, a lot of this avodah that we're talking about now becomes easier, because then when you look back at the failings that you do have, you have a way to process it, and we're like, but I could still rely on Hashem. It doesn't matter, even if I failed, even if I made mistakes, I still have a Father to lean on, and Hashem will give us chizuk to keep going. Have a wonderful evening. Looking forward to learning with you tomorrow.